Okay, so it's eternal. We have thoughts that it's a field, it expands and contracts. What was your thoughts, sorry?
Infinite source of energy.
Infinite source of energy. Any other
This
thoughts?
comes also to the field. This comes also to the field. It's compatible with the field.
What is the source of energy?
I also included that source of energy on the field.
Okay. So today we want to look at this topic rather in depth and see what the Vedas have to say about this. So today we are sharpening the axe. So what does that mean? In 11th canto of Bhagavatam, Krishna has told to Arjuna, sharpen the axe of transcendental knowledge and you should cut the subtle material coverings of the soul. Upon realizing the Supreme Personality of Godhead, you should give up that axe of analytical knowledge. So this axe of tattva jnana, philosophical truth, the truth will set you free. When we only have very hazy, vague ideas about things, then this will not liberate and give us a very solid conception and discernment between what is matter and what is spirit. And then we'll just be going in the hamster wheel of the mind of all these vague conceptions. So this axe of tattva jnana, this will set you free. So tattva jnana is very good. So in ancient Arabia, in the 12th century, there was one Islamic philosopher and mystic called Ibn Tufal, and he wrote one philosophical novel. He was around from 1105 to 1185, and he wrote one philosophical novel called Hayy ibn Yaqzan. And in this story, there was one child put in a basket and sent out to sea. And that child washed up on an island, and then he was recovered by a baby deer, and there was no other humans on the island, and he was raised by the mother deer. And he grew up thinking that he was a deer. And then after some time, he realized, oh, I'm a little bit different to the rest of the deer. And then by his own inclination, he made some clothing for himself to cover his private parts. And after some time, his mother, the deer, she actually passed away. And then he thought, oh, there must be some blockage inside of her. So then he cut the deer open, his mother open, and he found the heart. And he thought, oh, there must be some blockage in the heart. So then he cut the heart open, looking for, oh, where's the blockage? If I just unblock this blockage, she'll come back to life. So then he cut open the heart, and he couldn't find anything. But through this inference, he realized there must be something immaterial that was animating my mother. So by his own investigation, he come to the inferred conclusion that there's a soul. And then so he started to engage in meditation, and his consciousness expanded to the field of the planets and the celestials. It's a long story, but long story short, after a long time when he was older, another man came to the island, and that man came to do tapasya and just meditate on God for the rest of his days. So then they meet, and then the man who came to the island was very shocked to see another human being there, and he ran away, and eventually they became friends, and the man who came to the island taught him to converse in human language. And then Hayy ibn Yaqzan, he had actually come to quite a high level of spiritual realization, and he realized about God, that there must be a God and there must be a soul. So then he was conversing with this man who had come to the island to do tapasya, and the man was telling him, oh, there's the mainland, there's the city, and all the peoples, they follow this certain religion. And then Hayy ibn Yaqzan, he was sharing his realizations. And then that man realized, whoa, this guy's actually a great sadhu. And so he said, oh, you should come back to the island, the mainland, and you should teach the people and share about your realizations. So then he took him back to the mainland, and Hayab and Yakzan, he started to share amongst the populace about his realizations about God. And actually, in the beginning, people were like, oh, this man's nice. But then after a short time, they didn't like him because the rules and regulations of their book and what he was teaching was somewhat higher. So then they started to get a little bit angry with him. And then he realized, actually, these people aren't ready for this kind of teaching. So I should just go back to the island. Both men went back to the island and they spent the rest of their days there. In the introduction to this book, there's a very interesting point brought up. So 3 considerations in regards to the soul. 1, that it's inherently good. 2, that it's inherently bad. 3, that it's inherently neutral. So even Tufel, he was leaning towards the soul's inherently good, Satchit Ananda. And then he gives that comparison of Lord of the Flies. And Lord of the Flies, if you're familiar with this book or with this movie, it's quite Christian-centric, that the soul is inherently bad. It's born into original sin. And then he quotes an American philosopher, Justin Goldstein, I think, that the soul is inherently neutral and it depends upon the association that it has that will shape the soul. So you can think about that for yourself. Is the soul inherently good? Is the soul inherently bad? Or is the soul inherently neutral? And different schools of thought, they have their leanings one way or another in this subject matter. We'll also touch upon what the Vedas actually say about this. So this is just to give some context about how different schools and different theologies look upon the subject of the soul. So in Islam, the word for the soul is called ruh. And ruh is mentioned 21 times in the Quran. But it's also, there's different descriptions of this word ruh. And in Christianity, there's the word soul and then there's the word spirit. And sometimes, depending on which version of the Bible, these terms are used interchangeably. And the soul can refer to thinking, feeling, and willing, but it's not referring to a particle of spiritual consciousness. And then sometimes the spirit or the soul refers to, like in Genesis 2.1 or 2.7, that God breathed into the clay and animated man. So then, depending on the version of the Bible, that the body is one with the soul. And this leads to some tricky considerations that when you are resurrected, then you're resurrected in your body, but then your grandmother, is she going to have a very old body? And then your great-great-grandmother are going to be like 95 for eternity in heaven, and then live, So this is not to downplay other religions or speak against them. It's rather to illuminate how deep and profound is the Vedic knowledge. And it's not some fuzzy, hazy idea about what is the soul, what it could be, and then with very limited thinking. It's very profound, it's very scientific. So, in India, there is 6 classical schools of Indian philosophy: Nyaya, Vaisheshik, Purvamimamsa, Yoga, Sankhya, and Vedanta. Or in other words, the school of logic, Nyaya, the school of Vaisheshik, atomic theory, the school of Purvamimamsa, cause and effect, Sankhya, which is Vedic metaphysics, the yoga school, like Ashtanga Yoga, 8 limbs of yoga, and then Vedanta, which is basically a summary of all of them and establishes what is the actual Brahman. So you'll see that in these 6 classical schools of Indian philosophy, all the conceptions and philosophies of the world are all contained in these 6 categories. So for example, Nyaya, logic, very popular these days. Everything should be investigated through logic and rational empiricism, the empirical process of step-by-step gaining knowledge. So this is the nice Nyaya school. The second one, Vaisheshik, atomic theory. So many thousands of years ago, the atomic theory was already known and talked about in India. The third one, cause and effect. For every action, there must be a reaction. So we can see that modern day science is very much an operational language of how things interact together. So this is a cause and effect. So it was already there in the Vedas. And then Sankhya, metaphysics, which we've touched on in some of the previous classes. The chart of 24 elements and the chitta and the expansion and contraction of the chitta. And then the yoga school, 8 limbs of yoga, starting with yams and niyams, observances and moral codes, and then asana, pranayam, pratyahara, dharana, dhyana, samadhi. And then the last school is Vedanta, which Vedanta means the end of knowledge. And then different acharyas from different traditions, they have given their own interpretation to this text of Vedanta. So let's look at some of the ways that these different schools have viewed this subject matter of Atma, or the soul. So basically these schools can be divided into 2 categories, Nastic and Astic. So Nastic means they don't accept the authority of the Vedas. And in classical times in India, some of the proponents of these Nastic schools were Charvak, Buddhism and Jainism. They don't subscribe to the Vedas as being authoritative. And in the Astic schools, Nyaya, Vaisheshik, Sankhya, Yoga, Mimamsa, Vedanta, they are all in the Astic schools. They accept the authority of the Vedas to lesser or more degree. In modern times, a lot of people think Vedanta is Advaita Vedanta in connection to Shankaracharya. But actually, there is many interpretations of Vedanta. But to actually know what, because Vedanta is about 550 sutras, and these sutras, they are very short, cryptic aphorisms, and they are like little zip files. And because they're so short and cryptic, it can be hard to interpret what is their meaning just on face value. So that's why you need to study under an acharya, under a realized guru, to see actually what is the true meaning of these short cryptic sutras of Vedanta Sutra. But also, Vedavyas has given his own commentary on these 550 verses of Vedanta, and that is the Shrimad Bhagavatam. So if you actually want to know for sure what Vedavyas is trying to convey to us through Vedanta, through the Vedanta Sutra, then one needs to study Shrimad Bhagavatam. Otherwise, so many interpretations will come, but these interpretations are based on one's own agenda, and actually it's quite out of alignment of what Vedavyas was actually trying to present. So in the Gnostic schools, how they look at Atma, there used to be one personality called Charvak in India, and he was very much a materialist. So most people in modern times, they are in the Charvak Sampradaya, and he just wanted to enjoy. And I forget the shloka, but he used to have one saying, buy ghee, and because ghee makes your food very tasty. And even if you can't afford to buy ghee, just borrow money, go into debt, and just enjoy eating this ghee. And when you die, no one can do anything. So,
You eat lot of ghee, and when you die, what?
If you're still in debt when you die, no problem, because you'll be dead and there'll be no reaction to that. So just try to enjoy it with your senses as much as you can in life. This is Charvak Darshan, but this is actually all the modern society. They are in the Sampradaya of Charvak Muni, because this is modern mentality. Just enjoy, 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 with no deeper consideration that what I'm doing is going to have repercussions in the future. And we can see a commonality in many of the main religions around the world, that what I do here in this life will have repercussions in the future. They have their own ideas of what that will look like, but there's a common theme there, that what I do now, there will be a fallout for that. But the modern materialist, they're not thinking, they just enjoy, 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 eat your ghee, and then bas, finished. So in Charvak Darshan, that is called Lokya. It's materialism where they think that the body is the self. So if there's a conception of a soul that's in relation to this physical body. So we can see that this Charvak Darshan is very popular in modern times. And then the next one is Buddhism. You know, the Buddha himself, he did not make any definitive statement whether there is an existence of the soul, if there is actually an Atma, or if there is a God. And about 300 years after his departure, one prominent teacher in his line called Narga Arjuna, he made the statement that there's no soul and no God. So we see this is a bit of a common theme. When the master leaves, then a few hundred years later, there's so many different like Chinese whispers of what the master was actually teaching. And then we get all these different sects arising, supposedly based on the one scripture or the one teachings of a certain master. But people are mixing their own ideas and what the master was actually teaching himself, then we can't say for sure. Because mostly what the Buddha was teaching was phenomenology. He spoke about the 5 skandhas, certain elements, earth, water, fire, air, no ether in his darshan. So his 5 skandhas were air, Vedana, feelings, conceptual knowledge, samskaras, and consciousness. But he didn't give any personal teachings about where is this consciousness actually coming from, because each teacher has some vaishishta, some speciality. So he was teaching techniques to how to deal with your mind. And when the mind is calm, and we can go into deeper states of meditation and come to deeper levels of realization. When your mind's in a state of oscillation, then this is practically impossible. So someone once asked the Buddha, is there a God or not? And Buddha said, what's the point in me actually telling you? Better off you just go and practice these meditation techniques, and then you can know for yourself. Because if anyone just tells you anything, it's just a belief system. If you're not actually following the process to have realization for yourself, then it can just become an intellectual concept. So the third one in the Nastic, it was Jainism. No, the Jains are still around. So for them, the self is spiritual. There's an infinite number of souls. They are all individual, but the soul is all pervading. It's everywhere, just like what you were sharing. So this is from the point of view of Jain Darshan. And then an interesting point, if you think of an elephant and then you think of an ant, is the soul the same size or not? What do you think? Big animal could be very big, little microscopic microbe, and the soul could be very small. So does it expand or contract?
Bhagavad Gita says it's so small.
Yes, well, this is the question. Does the elephant have a very large soul? Does the ant have a very small soul? Is the human soul medium size? What is it? So according to Jainism, the soul is medium size, and but it's all pervading. And when the jiva becomes liberated, then he becomes unlimited in power, etc. All powerful, like descriptions of God. So next is the Astic Darshans who have some faith in the Vedas. So we'll start with Nyaya, the school of logic. So in Nyaya Darshan, the Atma, the soul, it's distinct from the body. It's eternal. It has no parts, meaning it's one root, ek root. It's not made of further constituent parts that can be broken down. It's one vastu, one substance. And the Atmas are plural, meaning there are many souls, and they are eternal. So far, so good. But the souls are all pervading. And we'll look in a moment, what does it mean that the souls are all pervading? Also in the Vaisheshik and the Nyaya Darshans, the soul is actually inert. And it's only when the soul comes into contact with matter, namely the mind and intelligence and ahankar, does the consciousness come online. So the ability to have consciousness, it only arises in contact with matter. And if it has no contact with matter, then the soul is just inert. So this is the point of view of Nyaya and Vaisheshik Darshan.
Excuse me, I don't get you. The word you are using, the soul is just
Inert, meaning dull, no function. So it's a bit like Cartesian dualism in modern day science, because in modern science there's essentially two perspectives on the origin of consciousness: Cartesian dualism and epiphenomenalism. So Cartesian dualism means that consciousness is distinct from matter, but it resides within matter and guides it. And the other one, epiphenomenalism, is when certain material ingredients aggregate together, then somehow or other consciousness just arises. But that's like saying, if there's one blind man, he can't see, but if you get 100 blind men together, then suddenly vision comes. But what they have in common is matter is the fundamental aggregate for the consciousness. So there's a similar thing here in Nyaya and logic schools, that the consciousness only arises in contact with matter. So that's from the point of view of Vaisheshik and Nyaya. Next is Mimamsa, or Purva Mimamsa of Jaimini Rishi. So in this school, this is the school of cause and effect. So in this school, the souls, they are eternal, they are plural, they are distinct from the body, but they're all pervading. And the soul is the knower. He has knowership. He has the faculty of consciousness. He has the faculty of agency. He can instigate activity and he can experience. But all these three qualities, they only arise when the soul is in contact with matter. So if the soul has no contact with matter, it cannot know anything, it cannot experience anything, and it cannot instigate any activity. So this is the point of view of Mimamsa, the school of cause and effect. And also in this school, there's no liberation from this cycle of samsara. So basically, you should just try to always be on top of the karmic pile. Always just try to elevate yourself to the heavenly planets. always just try to have a better business, step on the head of everyone else, you can have more money. So we can see the mentality of these schools are prevalent all in modern society. The Vedic knowledge is so deep and so profound, there's nothing new under the sun. Everything's already there. So next up is Yoga and Samkhya. Sometimes these schools are described in pairs because these pairs have some commonalities. So in Yoga and Samkhya, both these schools are dualistic. There's Prakriti, material nature, and then there's Purusha, the individual enjoyer. So here in these schools, the souls are plural, they're eternal, they're not the body, and they're not the mind, but they're all pervading. And the soul is the subject of knowledge, not the object of knowledge. It can know its own chitta victories, the waves in the space of the mind, the thoughts in the space of the mind. So the soul is just consciousness. And we'll go into these terms a little bit deeper soon. Also in this yoga school and Samkhya school, they say that the Atma is also Satchit Ananda, but Ananda is part of the field. It's part of the field and it eventually must be free from Ananda. So Ananda is the contents of consciousness, but it's not actually an inherent quality in the Atma itself. And so that's why there's the verse in the Bhagavatam that the yogi has to remove his hook-like mind from perceiving the Paramatma and actually give up realization of God to actually merge into asampragyata samadhi, to completely dissolve themselves. So they must actually, in that darshan, they must give up Ananda, they must give up bliss to actually obtain their goal of nothingness. So that's an interesting point. Because from that point of view, Ananda is sattva, so it's a guna, and those gunas must be given up.
Actually, can I ask, you said Ananda, it is said that the absolute, just before the absolute, is Satchit Ananda, is the door of the absolute. Now we say these are gunas.
From this darshan, from this school's point of view,
Which school?
Yoga and Samkhya. So these are two of the 6 classical schools of Indian philosophy. So we're explaining how each one perceives the Atma, to give some context and some comparison of coming to the conclusion of the Gaudiya Vedanta.
But they describe it, I thought it all this a common point, call it Satchidananda, that state. How can it be gunas?
That's how they think.
Satchidananda, huh?
That's how they think. Because we have to understand here, what is the goal, generalizing of course, but what is the goal of the yogi? Asampragyata samadhi, a complete disconnection of Prakriti, and to lose themselves, to merge into a field of nothingness. And so, because here, Ananda is in the field, it's something that can be known. All things that can be known must eventually be given up if you want to merge into a Sampragyata samadhi. So, yeah, so in comparison here to Bhakti Marg, we don't want to merge into a field of nothingness, but we also want to give up our connection with Prakriti, but there's a Sarup Shakti, a spiritual energy that is available, and we can have the Sampragyata Samadhi, the connection with the spiritual energy. That is not to be given up. So there's divergence there between the yoga schools and Bhakti Marg. So then let's look at Advaita Vedanta. So here the jivas are plural. They're not plural. They're not individual, and they actually they don't even exist. There's only Brahman, the light of Brahman. Just like inside a pot there's space, and if we smash the pot, then that space merges back in with the space that's all around. So that pot is like the jiva, but it's a upadhi, it's a temporary designation, but actually all that exists is Brahman. And here there is quite a few limitations in this philosophy, because if there's only Brahman, then how can there be, where is Maya? Because if only Brahman is real, there's no space for there to be anything else. No space for there to be a jiva, and no space for there to be a Maya. But let's say, hypothetically, okay, we'll allow them that somehow or other, there's only Brahman, but then somehow there's also Maya. So, in the Advaita Vedanta, there is Parichinnayavad and Pratibimbavad. So, the jiva arises, Pratibimbavad, the theory of reflection. So when Brahman is reflected in Maya, then that reflection becomes jiva, like the individual pot. And upon liberation, then that individual pot merges back with the totality of Brahman. And then the other one, Parichinnayavad, that means the theory of covering, that some portion of Brahman has become covered, like the space inside a pot, and when you get liberation, like smashing the pot, it merges back with Brahman. But the limitation here is now you've created a duality. You've got Brahman and you've got Maya. But if only Brahman is real, then how can there be any Maya? So this is actually quite a dosh, quite a fault, and in both fields. So whether you have the theory of reflection or the theory of covering, still there's another substance that is Maya, which is separate to Brahman, and that reflecting aggregate, or that covering quality that creates the jivas, but it's separate to Brahman. So you can think about that for yourself. So what does it mean to be all-pervading? So we hear these descriptions of Bhagavan, of God, omnipotent, omnipresent, all everywhere. So if the Atma, if the individual soul is all-pervading, then that means that my soul pervades all of your souls. Therefore, I can read all of your minds, because everything's interconnected. But we can know from our own experience. We know our field, our individual field, but we don't know the field of others. If you have some siddhi, maybe you can get some insight, or through reading body language, this kind of thing. Because actually, how someone is sitting, their body posture, they're telling their whole life to you, actually. And how can we actually handle life if we can't even sit up straightly, and because the whole nervous system, vagus nerve, is coming up the spine. So our whole posture actually indicates our mental, emotional state, the whole thing. So just sit up properly, like a yogi, then this will give you a very good capacity to just handle the problems of life. And you'll see a lot of depressed people, they're sitting like this and that, because they're not even creating a posture to actually handle life. So that's just a little side tangent, that people are always revealing their whole life story to you. But this is not all-pervading knowledge. So if the Atma, if the souls are all-pervading, every soul would know the ins and outs of every other soul. But we can see that's not our experience. So this conception of the souls being all-pervading, this is an all-pervading defect in these schools. So we dismiss that. That's not praman, that's not actual evidence and not a valid means of knowing the soul.
You say sometimes I don't get your, because of your English and my English, you say because of my English. consider the soul is all pervading.
Mm-hmm.
That our experience is that if it were all pervading, we all would know about other people, other souls. But because we don't know, it means it's not all pervading. This is what you said.
Yeah, that's one way we can know that the soul is not all pervading.
But it makes no sense just because we do not perceive it to consider that it's not perceivable. Because many people, there is something called just one little part. It is a telepathy, and there are people who are also, I don't know what's the word. There are people who feel everybody. There are people who hear everybody. There are people who are everybody. The fact that I'm not able to do so, it doesn't mean it's not a quality of my soul. Actually, it can be developed. Many people develop it, and other people have it natural. I mean, the fact that we don't know something, it doesn't mean it doesn't exist. You know, and we all have the experience of feeling somebody. This happens when we are in love. Then we start to feel everything and to know everything. If somebody has been in love, she knows, suddenly you know what he's thinking,
Yes.
what he's feeling, and the rest of the mortal, we feel nothing and know nothing. But it doesn't mean it's not there.
Yeah, of course, when you feel some connection with someone, there's a psychophysical connection, and because they become part of your field, you can know your own field. And to a certain extent, if your consciousness becomes refined, then you can know to a certain degree the fields of other beings. But even these people who so-called know everyone, do they know the field of the microbe? Do they know the field of the shark? Do they know the field of the whale? Do they know the field of the alien 10 million trillion light years away? They may know something.
Yes, they could. It means it's possible. It means it's possible when the fact that the experience that we mentioned before shows that it's possible. But now you shouldn't need such a big love. But it is possible. Because I mean, the fact that you reach a little bit, it means you could reach more. You reach a little bit with a little bit of love. But then if you had more love, then you will feel everything, you will hear everything, you will be everything. Actually, when the two people are in love, they think they are one. Now you extend, it's simply a matter of extending. I'm not saying it's easy, but yes, it's conceptually simple.
Okay, thank you for sharing.
Maybe we can look at the example of the Mahabhagavad Vaishnava.
Yeah, like Narad Muni, he can.
Or like Gurudev, like he knows.
But he has Sarup Shakti, and we're going to get to that, because right now we're talking about within Prakriti. So we'll come back to that point. Thank you for sharing.
Before, may I say something? You mentioned another school, so many schools, that they consider that the example you make is that one blind man cannot see, but then okay, just I would like to point, there is a book called in Spanish is Potencias de 10, and like 10 elevated exponential relationships. And that is a very small book which I allow myself to recommend, because it shows that effectively when you have more quantity of something, a quality change. I just allow myself to strongly suggest this book, because it is not intuitive. You know, when you say 10 blind people cannot see, but maybe it's not true. Maybe it's not true. So the book is Potencias de 10, exponential of 10, something like this. And I allow myself to strongly recommend it, because it will change the concept you have about nature. Yes, increasing the quantity, apart from one moment, it changed the quality. It changed the quality, actually it does. I'm not sure, I'm not saying it applies to soul, because I'm not the expert here. But yes, maybe 10,000 of blind people, suddenly they see something like this. Yes.
Well, the whole world is blind, and I think they can't see much at all, because the whole world is following Charvak Darshan, billions and billions of people, and what can they see? Only limited sense perception and enjoying lots of ghee. So that it's not a praman of bringing lots of people together, but thank you for sharing that perspective. And I'm sharing the perspectives of the schools, how each one views Atma.
This is not, I have no line, that's why I cannot check for the name in English. It is not a perspective of mine or anybody else. It is some scientific facts.
Okay, we can talk about this over lunch. Let's get back to our subject at hand. So now I want to look at 3 verses from Padma Purana, Uttrakanda section, chapter 226, verses 34 to 37. And there has been one commentator on these verses, Jaimatri Muni, coming in the line of Ramanuja Acharya, and how he has illuminated such deep and profound siddhanta about the soul. It is remarkable. And this description that Jaimatri Muni has given has also been quoted by Jiva Goswami and Paramatma Sandarbha. So I'll just read the verse and then we'll go through what are some of the meanings of this verse. And so this is the acts of actual perception of actually what is the Atma according to the school of Gaudiya Vaishnavism. Because these different schools that we've covered, they have their own theology. So then they have their own interpretation of what is the soul that supports the theology that they have. But whether that theology is ultimately true or not, actually, those previous schools, they have all been dismissed by Vedavyas in the Vedanta Sutra. So these previous conceptions, they have some limitation. But if you have some resonance that you want to go to that school and follow that theology, everyone has free will. No problem, do as you like. But here, this is a Tato Brahma Jigyasi. We want to inquire about the truth and this is coming from those who have seen the truth. Because so often we have the conditioning that we already have some agenda in our heart, and we gravitate towards a philosophy or a point of view that supports the agenda that we already have in the heart. And this agenda in the heart is coming from conditioned material samskaras. So here we are hearing from rishis who have gone into bhakti samadhi, and they have completely transcended any material samskaras, and out of grandmotherly kindness they are sharing their revelations in bhakti samadhi, so we can also come to this level of realization and actually come to a very clear understanding of what is our soul, what is the purpose of our soul, and what is the relationship of our soul with the Supreme Soul, without any contamination of material consciousness mixed in. So this is what we want to hear from now. So try to hear very carefully. So, Atmana Devo Narado Natriyakstavaro Nacha Nadeho Navindriyam Naiva Manaha Prano Nanapidihi Najaro Navaikari Cha Jnana Matra Atmako Nacha Swasmai Swayam Prakashaha Shad Eka Rupa Surupa Bhak Chaitano Vapi Shilas Chachit Ananda Atmakas Tata Ahamarta Pratikitram Vinono Nitya Nilamaha Tacha Gantritra Katritra Bokritra Nijadamakaha Paramatmaka Shishta Swabhavaha Swabada Swasta Iti. So then we'll go through step by step and see what this means and how deep and profound this is. So first of all, Atmana Devo, the soul is not a deva, it's not a human, and it's not an animal. In the Christian tradition, St. Thomas of Aquinas, he made the distinction between animal souls and human souls. And then so when you have a distinction of one soul being lesser and then one soul being upper, you can justify so much demonic propensities that you can overlord on those inferior souls, because then other souls just become a foodstuff. So Jayamantri Rishi is pointing out here, the soul is not an animal, it's not a deva, and it's not a human. Na deho, the soul is not the body. Narendriyam, the soul is not your senses. Naiva manaha, the soul is not the mind. It's not the thoughts in your mind. It's not the personality. It's not what you think about yourself. It's none of these things. Pranana, the soul is not the life force. It's not the field of energy either. Nanapi, the soul is not your intelligence. Najado, the soul is not inert, because in Nayan Vaisheshik they think the soul is inert. Navaikari, the soul does not go through any transformations. Jnana matra atmako nacha, the soul, he is not Gyan matra, not only consciousness. The soul is more than that. So we can see just up to this point that, practically speaking, maybe every tradition outside the Vedic corpus, they have been dismissed now, because they only have some vague idea of the soul, or they think it's the life force, they think it's the mind, they think it's the body, they're making distinctions between souls. So all of this has been rejected. So this is not to speak against them, this is to illuminate the profundity of the knowledge that we are coming across here. So what is this soul? Swasmai Swayam Prakashaha. Prakash means luminous, and this luminosity, it can be of two kinds, as a quality and as a substance. So when this prakash is in the form of a quality, it makes visible the source of its own knowledge, or in other words, it can be self-aware. And when this prakash as a dravya, it's as a substance, it makes itself visible to other objects. So to give an example of this, there's a candle, and you can see the candle burning, so therefore it's illuminating itself to other objects or to other beings. You can see the candle. Also, it's illuminating other objects in the room. Swayam Prakash. But a candle cannot be self-aware. So it can illuminate other things. Other beings can see the candle, but the candle cannot be aware of its own self. It cannot illuminate itself to itself. But the Atma, the soul, is Swasmai Swayam Prakash. It can be self-aware, it can illuminate other things to itself, and also other beings can be aware of it. So it has these three levels of Prakash, of illumination. So other schools, they maybe take one or two of these prakash, these stages of illumination. But here, we are taking all three. Because it's like a diamond. Let's say there's a diamond that has three facets. And if you touch upon just one facet of that diamond, because it's eternal and it's true, it feels like you have the whole realization. And so that's why different schools, they are focusing on one facet of the diamond of Atma or of consciousness, it feels like it's the whole thing. So when you go into that meditative experience, because you're touching on something eternally real, it feels like the Purnata, the full moon of the realization. But actually it's only one facet. And to get the full facet of the diamond of the soul, and then this is what we're coming to. So this soul has three eternal qualities. So we'll carry on going through this verse actually. Swat Eka Rupa, the soul is uniform. So there's not the big elephant soul and the tiny ant soul. Because it's said in Sastra, if you take the tip of a hair and then you chop that tip of the hair into 100 pieces, throw away 99 and just keep one little piece of that tip of the hair, and then that one little piece, you chop that again into 100 pieces, throw away 99 and just keep one. This is an analogy to point towards the dimensions of the soul. It is so minute, it is anu, it is atomic, it's a particle, an eternal particle of spiritual consciousness. And so that all souls are uniform in size, regardless of the body that they are currently in. Swarupabha, he is always situated in his own nature. Chaitanya Vapti Shilascha, situated in one place, it is present all over the body via the spread of his consciousness. So that this Atma, this atomic particle of spiritual consciousness, it is floating on the prana in the heart chakra. And around the soul, the Atma, is the 6 atoms of the senses. Taste, touch, sound, smell, sight, and the 6th sense being the mind. Now, the praman, the proof that the senses are actually atomic in nature around the heart, and the seat of the senses is not the physical senses themselves. We can infer this from the dream state, because in the dream state you can see, you can hear, you can touch, but how can you see? Your eyes are closed, you're sleeping. You can hear, you might have some earbuds in your ears, but how can you hear anything? How can you touch? So you can still have this experience in the dream state, in the Shukshma Sharira, in the subtle astral body, because you still are connected to the seats of the senses themselves, because the seats of the senses themselves are atomic around the heart. They're not the actual physical elements in the body. So that's why a blind person can still have visions within their own internal chitta. A deaf person can hear noises even if they have some defect. There was actually one neurosurgeon. She ended up having a brain scan and an entire half of her brain was completely missing. So you can still have so much cognitive functions from consciousness, because the seat of consciousness is not the physical material itself. So even if you have some limb or something missing, the substratum of consciousness is finer than matter. Chit Ananda Atmaka, the soul is constitutionally Sat, Chit and Ananda. So the soul is eternally existing, it has the ability to know, and it's full of joy. This is our essential eternal nature. So you can just see for yourself, if you are not always blissful in an ocean of joy, then you're not actually situated in your own nature. And Patanjali said the same things at the start of the Yoga Sutras. You're either lost in the changing states of the mind, or you're Om Shanti in your own nature. So and there's no in between. He didn't give a third option. So we can just see for ourselves, how much are we floating in the bliss of our own true nature, and how much are we just lost in the monkey mind, going from here to there, here to there, here to there. You can take your own pulse and see. Tatya Sham Artaha. He is the locus of the I-ness. So some people say ego is bad and we need to get rid of this ego, but actually we need to make a very subtle distinction here, that the soul, because it's eternally an individual particle of spiritual consciousness, it eternally has I-ness. But this I-ness is not the ahankar, it is not the conditioned ego. And if the Atma, if the soul did not have I-ness, there would be no substratum for material ego to identify with. So at the moment, we are this eternal sense of I-ness. We are in a state of pollution and superimposing that on all our material experiences. But if there was not this eternal individual I-ness, then you would not even be able to identify with your false ego. So this is a very profound point. You can think about that. Try to meditate on it. If the soul was all pervading, there would be no I-ness, because the soul is one with everything. And if there was no eternal I-ness, then that you would not be able to identify with your ego at all, because there will be no sense of I-ness, individuality to identify with at all. So this is another praman that the soul is not all-pervading oneness. It is a praman that the soul is eternally individual. So even to be lost in your own monkey mind, in your own ego, points to the fact that you are eternally individual. You can meditate upon that. It's very deep.
Not now, because they will complain, but I have the proof that you can be all-pervading and still individual. But it just comes naturally from mathematics.
Okay, you can
Next
enlighten
time.
us over
Next
that.
time.
Prati Chitran Bino. There is a different Atma in every field. So every individual being has its own Atma. Every field of self-awareness, there's an individual Atma there. And also we should also keep in mind where this verse is coming from. Padma Purana, conversation between Shiva and Parvati. So many people, they are having a conception that Shiva is ultimately formless, all these kind of leanings. Where's this teaching about Atma coming from? It's coming from the mercy of Lord Shiva himself. So we just try to hear the teachings of Lord Shiva about Atma. Then we can be very clear. Bino Nora Nitya. The souls are atomic and they're partless. So the souls are atomic, very tiny particles of spiritual consciousness. Nitya Nirmalamaha. They're eternal and they're pure. They're not contaminated with any material energy, because the Atma is of spiritual nature. Now, here's 3 very important points. I wanted to write these on the whiteboard, but our whiteboard's gone walkabout today. Gan Trutva. The soul has the power of knowing. So the soul has the power of consciousness. It can know other things. This is a very important point, because many schools, they are just focusing on this Gyan Trutva aspect of Atma, the consciousness, and then they draw a line in the sand and say this is all there is. There's only consciousness. And if you want to gravitate towards that, you have free will as you like. But this is one facet of the Atma. It is not the full picture. So then if we gravitating towards a perspective that there's only consciousness. Then we create a metaphysical theology to try to back up that there's only consciousness. And then so we have darshans like Advaita Vedanta and certain schools of Buddhism to support that there's only consciousness. But if you go deeper into the realization of Atma, then you'll see that there's more than just consciousness itself. So the next one, Kartritva. He can instigate activity. He has the eternal function of Kriya. He can instigate activity. And then the next one, Bhoktritva. The soul has the ability to experience. So these are the three eternal facets of the soul. The soul has consciousness or knowership capacity. The soul can instigate activity, and the soul can experience. And if the soul had no ability to instigate any activity, all the teachings of the scriptures and the sages would be a complete waste of time, because who would it be speaking to? If there's only awareness, what can you do? You're just aware. So the soul has this ability eternally. It's an eternal, integral quality of the soul to instigate activity and to experience. So just see how profound and how deep these teachings are. Nila Dhammakaha. These are his qualities, the soul's qualities, and these are his Dharma. These are eternal functions that cannot be separated from the soul. So the soul will always, eternally, have these qualities to know, to instigate, and to experience. And if you want to gravitate towards a certain teaching that only focuses on one of those aspects, that's fine. And maybe that aspect only will be manifest for you. But it will not invalidate, or it will not dismiss the other aspects. They may just go into a state of dormancy, but you cannot get rid of them, because they are eternal attributes of the soul. So if you actually can grasp this, you will understand many traditions very, very well, and just see on what aspect of Atma are they focusing upon. Because even the conception that there's only consciousness, still this is not even going deeper into the Atma Tattva. It's only focusing on the quality of the soul, but where is this quality of consciousness coming from? It's coming from Atma. So just see how profound and how refined is the vision coming in this Gaudiya line. It's very astonishing, very amazing. So I think we'll just have a little kirtan break, because that's some Siddhanta, quite heavy Siddhanta for you to digest. Any quick questions on any of that?
Yes, you said the soul is no radiance, or how
Yeah.
is it?
If there's the sun planet, the sun planet, and from the sun, so many rays of light are emanating. It's giving illumination to everything right now. But with a refined vision, one can see there's so many photons of light. And these photons of light are eternal, individual particles of light coming from the sun. They're eternal. They're eternally individual. and they have the same qualities as the sun planet. They have light, they can emit heat, etc., warmth. But their capacity to emit those qualities is very minute in comparison to the sun planet. So this analogy is given that God is like the sun, and the jiva, the individual living entity, is like the photon. But both of them have the same qualities. So there's a oneness there. But there's a difference in terms of quantity. So the individual soul can know his own field, and he can emit his light around his limited own individual field. But Bhagavan, like the sun, is spreading light everywhere. And Bhagavan, God, is the knower of all fields, all the time. That's why he is omniscient. But we don't know all fields all the time. So that's one thing. Kandapa. So just try to digest some of this during the kirtan.
What is the name of the book that you recommended?
If you really want to study this in depth, you need to study Sambhavas by Jiva Goswami.
This is Bhagavad Gita.
Start with Bhagavad
There is
Gita.
a chapter about Kshatriya, Samak Kshatriya, it's easier than some of
But that's where I'm getting that.
Yes,
Yes,
yeah,
you're
I
right.
found the link and I shared the link with the
Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare, Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Hare Rama, Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Ram, Ram Ram, Hare Hare, Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Ram, Ram Ram, Hare Hare, Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Ram, Ram Ram, Hare Hare, Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Ram, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Ram, Ram Ram, Hare Hare,
die. Let us die.
So I'll try and wrap this up as quick as possible, because I know everyone wants lunch. Sometimes when we're here in Tattva-Gyan, Tamagun comes in a very alluring form and embraces us. Stay sleeping, my dear friends. Don't come out of illusion. So if you're being embraced by Tamagun, try to resist. In chapter 2 Bhagavad Gita, Krishna has given so much description of Atma, of the soul, that it never takes birth, it's not killed when the body is slain, it can't be drowned, it can't be burnt, it can't be withered by the wind, it can't be hurt by any weapon, it can't be cut. The soul is immortal and it's spiritual. Nothing material can hurt the soul. Of course the body will die, but we're not the body. We are the soul. So if you want to read some more about that, I highly recommend chapter 2 of Bhagavad Gita. And now we just want to touch briefly upon what is the function of the soul. Because every vastu, every substance has some function. For example, it is the Dharma here in this context. This word Dharma means an intrinsic quality that cannot be separated from the object, and it's an eternal quality associated with that object. So it is the Dharma of fire to emit light and emit warmth. It is the Dharma of sugar to be sweet. It is the Dharma of salt to be salty. So if you have some white powder and it's not sweet, then it's not sugar. If it's not salty, then it's not salt. So these inherent qualities can never be separated from the object. It is the eternal Dharma of those objects. So the three eternal Dharmas, if you like, of the soul are these abilities to know, abilities to instigate activities, and the ability to experience. But it's also got a Dharma of what is its overall purpose, or what is its function, because it is the function of fire to be warm, emit light, etc. So what is the eternal function of the soul? What could it be? So this term in Sanskrit is called Jiva Dharma, the eternal function of the soul. So due to time, let me just tell you what it is. The eternal function of the soul is to serve. And you may think, oh, what's he talking about? I don't like serving. I'm not serving anyone. This guy is mad. Well, I might be mad, but this point's still right. So you are either serving the demands of your body, the demands of your senses, the demands of your family, the demands of your boss. You're serving your family, you're serving your mind, you're serving your desires. You're always serving something. Always like an itch that always needs to be scratched. You're always serving something. And the soul longs to serve in a loving relationship. It longs to be engaged in a loving kind of service. So that's why if your human relationships fail, then you get a cat and you want to serve the cat, because there's the natural propensity to want to serve. So that natural inborn propensity in the soul is to be engaged in loving service with God. This is the Nitya Dharma, the eternal function of the soul. You can try and get away from it, you can deny it, and go do so many other things as you like, but you will never be fulfilled deep inside on the level of the soul until one aligns with one's eternal function. One can do so many nimitic dharmas, temporary dharmas, trying to fulfill the service propensity here, there, and everywhere. But if you just align with the natural function and purpose of your soul to serve God, then all these other temporary dharmas will be taken care of. But if you're trying to put all these external functions first, you'll never be fulfilled. So just try to put Krishna in the center, and then everything will be very nice. It's like watering the root of the tree, and then all the fruit, the flowers, the leaves, everything will be nourished. If you just try to water one leaf, then the tree will be very sad, and you will be very sad also. So this is our swabhav, this is our eternal nature of the soul, is to be in loving reciprocation and loving service and loving exchange with reality. So that's why we're built for that, because the individual living soul and the supreme soul are eternally individual, so they can exchange this relationship of love and service. Because if there's just the all-pervading oneness, what's there to exchange love? Nothing. A big zero when it comes to love. There's no love there. So we are in the school of love, actually, in this bhakti yoga path. This is the school to learn how to love, because in our conditioned state, we don't know how to love. We are always engaged in a pursuit of how to make myself happy. Even in relationships, still this is about making myself happy. And really, when you really love someone, then the pleasing them, pleasing the object of love, you put that before your own pleasure. And we can try that to a limited extent in material relationships, but it only lasts for so long, and then after a short time we become frustrated, and it's like, well, what about me? And so this is the school of love, to actually learn what is love and how can we love. And we can only receive that from someone who already has that love. So that is Guru. He is abiding in the spiritual energy of pure love. And so we have to receive that transmission from someone who already has it. We can't just make it up by ourselves. It doesn't work like that. So we can sit around all day and talk about intellectual concepts and this and that. So today we had some concepts about the soul and about Atma to give you some vivek, some discernment, and to try to awaken your buddhi, your intelligence. But ultimately, we can't realize any of this by just sitting around and arguing and having philosophical conversations. This is not the method to realize. The method to realize, one, is chant mantra, but also chant mantra under the guidance of a realized saint. This is the process. So I just want to share one short history to give some illustration of how we can receive this transmission of love. So one time, there was one rishi, and he was called Daumya Rishi, and he had 3 disciples, but I'll only share about one today, due to time. And so this disciple's name was Upamanyu, and his duty was to take the cows out to graze. He was looking after the cows in the ashram. So he was taking the cows out to the forest every day to eat grass, and he would come back. And then after some time, his guru noticed, oh, Upamanyu, you're quite plump, you're quite fat. And like, how are you actually so large? Because I'm not giving you any prasadam to eat. So, Upamanyu, what are you eating if you're not offering it to me? Because the disciple should first offer the food to the guru, and then the guru can give some food back to the disciple. And then he said, oh, Gurudev, every day when I go and do my bhiksha, my begging for alms, then I eat some, and then I beg some more, and then what I beg more, I offer it back to you. So first we should actually offer to Gurudev before we take anything. But he was eating first, and then begging more, and then bringing it back to the ashram. So then Daumya Rishi said, don't do that. This is wrong technique. So first offer to me. Oh, sorry Gurudev, I won't do that again. So then time went on, and Upamanyu, he was still quite plump, still quite large. And Domya Rishi, he looked at his disciple and said, how is this happening? How are you not losing any weight? And then, are you still taking your picture and not offering it to me? Oh no, Gurudev, I'm not doing that. So how is it that you're still quite large? And then he said, every day when I take the cows out to graze, I drink some of the milk from the udders of the cows because I'm so hungry, Gurudev. And then Domya Rishi said, don't do this. The milk is for the calves. So stop doing that. Oh, sorry, Gurudev. I won't do it again. So then some time went on, and still Domya Rishi, he noticed that he was still, that Upamanyu was still quite large and not losing any weight. And then so Domya Rishi asked Upamanyu, how is it that you're still quite large? Are you still drinking the milk from the udders of the cows? And Upamanyu said, oh no, Gurudev, I'm not. But sometimes when the calves, they feed from the udders of the cows, so much foam comes around their mouth. I'm not sure if you've ever fed a calf before, but when they're drinking the milk, there's lots of foam that comes around their mouth. So he was getting this foam from the milk and he was eating that. Because he was so hungry. And so Domya Rishi said, you just stop doing that. Leave that for the cows, they can lick the calves, they can lick their lips. Oh, sorry, Gurudev, I won't do it again. So then some time went on, and he was out in the forest, and then he came across one plant called the akra plant. And if you rip that leaf of the akra plant, some white sap comes out, and the sap looks like milk. So he took a whole bunch of leaves and he squeezed it together, and all this white sap came out. And then he ate it because he was so hungry. But then the akra plant is actually poisonous. So then he became blind and he couldn't find his way back to the ashram. And as he was trying to find his way back to the ashram, he fell down a well, a dry well, and he was stuck there all night. So then Domya Rishi, he sent out his disciples and he went wandering in the forest. Oh, Upamanyu, where are you? Where are you? Where are you? And then they heard, I'm down here every day. He was stuck down the well. So then they pulled him out of the well, and then he was still blind. So Domya Rishi asked, well, what happened? And he said, oh, Gurudev, I was so hungry. So I got these leaves of the akra plant and I got the milk, but now I'm blind. And Domya Rishi said, you fool, this is poison. But do you remember the mantras to the Ashwini Kumaras that I taught you? They are the celestial physicians, the physicians of the celestial beings on the higher planets. And then Upamanyu said, yes, I remember those mantras. So Domya Rishi said, oh, you should chant the mantras. So with faith he chanted the mantras, and then the Ashwini Kumaras, the celestial physicians, they appeared there. And then Domya Rishi said, oh yes, this guy's blind, do you have some medicine? And then they produced a plate with some cake on it. And then they said to Upamanyu, I'll just eat this cake. And then Upamanyu said, no, I will not eat the cake. And then why won't you eat the cake? Because first I have to offer it to my Gurudev. And then the Ashwini Kumar said, you know, many years back we appeared to your Guru, and he just ate the cake and he didn't offer it to his Gurudev. And then Upamanyu thought for a moment and he said, well, whatever my Gurudev did, he has given me instruction that first I should offer it to my Guru. So then, finally, he started to follow his Guru's instructions and he offered it to his Gurudev. And then the Gurudev gave it back to Upamanyu, and then he ate the cake and his vision was restored. So then the Ashwini Kumaras, they left for their celestial planet, their celestial abode, and Domya Rishi, he was very pleased that finally, his disciple was following his instructions. So then he blessed him, and all the knowledge of the Vedas, everything in his heart will be revealed. So we can read so many books, have so many ideas in our head, but we will never be able to enter into the realization of it. We have to come under the guidance of someone who has that realization, who has the Sarup Shakti, the spiritual energy in their heart. And then from that, a semblance can come into our heart, and Chaito Dapana Majanam Bhajana Kriya, and doing practice under their guidance, slowly, the heart will become purified. But it will only actually become purified if we're doing it under the guidance of Sri Guru. If we're doing it just under our own effort, there won't be the semblance of Sarup Shakti, so the potency won't be there to actually do the deep cleansing that is necessary. So, let alone coming to the stages of deep realization, you won't even be able to clear them up from your heart without guidance of Guru. So, by serving in the mission of Guru, whether that's feeding the cows or doing so many things, whatever is our nature, Gurudev will give us instruction. We can chant mantra, serve under his guidance, and then we can realize all these Atma-tattva for ourselves, not just having intellectual ideas in our head. So this is the process. So thank you very much for patiently listening, and I invite you all to be engaged in this school of love, so you can actually come to understand who you actually are, what is your eternal function, and what is your eternal relationship with the divine, and then be engaged in that loving relationship for eternity. So I'll just end with one little poem from Guru Nanak before our next kirtan. The Guru is the stepping stone, the Guru is the boat, the Guru is the raft of Hari's name, the Guru is the lake, the Guru is the sea, the Guru is the ship, the Guru is the place to ford the stream. Would you like to glisten in the lake that is made of truth? Go then and bathe in that name. So upon that note, we can bathe in the holy names of Radha and Krishna, and then we can take prasad. Hare Krishna.